Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to day 93 of our Bhakti Vaibhava seminar on Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3. And we are in the 31st chapter. We are starting, we're actually doing this section now, fourth section, from verse 28 to verse 33. The child grows and experiences the difficulties of worldly life. It's from verse 28 to verse 33. We've already done just the verses. We read through the verses at the end of the previous section. So now we're going to do verses and purports, and then we'll carry on from there. Right, so, but first of all, our prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadeshatarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Right, so verse 28 to verse 33, the child grows and experiences the difficulties of worldly life. So verse 28, in this way, the child passes through his childhood, suffering different kinds of distress, and attains boyhood. In boyhood also, he suffers pain over desires to get things he can never achieve. And thus, due to ignorance, he becomes angry and sorry. Right, so in terms of the sort of the divisions of a person's life, or at least their young days, Srila Prabhupada talks about this in the purport. From birth to the end of 5 years is childhood, or Kumar, traditionally in Sanskrit. From 5 to the end of 15 is called Poganda. And at 16, youth begins, or the Kishore period. So we already discussed the distresses of childhood. So when the child reaches boyhood and then he has to go to school, which he doesn't like. I remember going to school. I really didn't like it at all. The child, or the boy, wants to play, but he's forced to go to school and pass exams, etc. Wants some things to play with, but can't, so feels more pain. So, in other words, so in one word, the boy, the child, the boy, is unhappy. That's the word. He's unhappy. In boyhood means the Poganda period, 5 to 15, he's unhappy. Just as he was when he was unhappy in his childhood up to 5. And what to speak of his youth, the Kishore period, from 16 on. And so he becomes aggrieved and feels pain. Yeah. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, boys are apt to create so many artificial demands for playing. And when they do not attain satisfaction, they become furious with anger, and the result is suffering. Verse 29, with the growth of the body, the living entity, in order to vanquish his soul, increases his false prestige and anger, and thereby creates enmity towards similarly lusty people. Yes, so let's go through the purport here. Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 verse 36. Arjuna asks Krishna, what is the cause of a living being's lust? And so Prabhupada continues, it's said that living entity is eternal and is qualitatively one with the Lord. So why does he fall prey to material things, to Maya, and do so much sinful activity? So then Krishna answers, it's lust. This is all in the context of Bhagavad Gita chapter 3 verse 36. So yes, why do all these things happen? Krishna says it's lust, which causes one to fall down from a high position to some abominable condition of material existence. And this lust, of course, turns into anger. This is from chapter 2, verse 62. Jyayato vishayan pumsa sangas teshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodo vijayati. While contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment for them. From attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger. Kama means lust. Kamat krodo vijayati. Krodo means anger. So they both, lust and anger, both come from passion. Yeah, so lust is a product of passion, of course. And when it's not satisfied, it turns into anger in ignorance. So from passion into ignorance. So when ignorance covers the soul, it is the source of degradation. Yeah. He gets degraded down into hellish life. So what to do? We go into the second paragraph. How to raise ourselves from this hellish existence to a high position of spiritual understanding. So what we need to do is transform this lust into love for Krishna. So Narottam Das Thakur says that because of lust we want so many things, but the same lust can be transformed so that we want everything for Krishna's satisfaction. Kama Krishna Kamarpane. Yes. And Prabhupada puts real emphasis on the idea, he puts it in italics, that lust can be transformed in a purified way, and then the italics, so we want everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And of course, anger can also be used against the atheists or those who are envious of Krishna or even envious of the devotees. So we came here to the hellish condition through lust and anger. Now we can use these two to advance in Krishna consciousness. then we can come to our original position. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore recommended that because in material existence we have so many objects of sense gratification which we need for the maintenance of the body, we should use all of them without attachment for the purpose of satisfying the senses of Krishna. That is actual renunciation. So that's really nice. That's really nice. That's something practical and real that we can do. So verse 30, by such ignorance, the living entity accepts the material body, which is made of 5 elements, as himself. With this misunderstanding, he accepts non-permanent things as his own and increases his ignorance in the darkest region. Prabhupada says, the expansion of ignorance is explained in this verse. The first ignorance is to identify with one's material, or to identify one's material body made of 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, to identify that body as the self. And then the second ignorance is to accept something as belonging to us due to the bodily conception. Bodily connection. In this way, the ignorance expands. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, the living entity is eternal, but because of his accepting non-permanent things, misidentifying his interest, he is put into ignorance, and therefore he suffers material pangs. So verse 31, for the sake of the body, which is a source of constant trouble to him, and which follows him because he's bound by ties of ignorance and fruit of activities. So for the sake of the body, he performs various actions which cause him to be subjected to repeated birth and death. Right, so let's have a look at the purport here. There's a fairly substantial purport. So Bhagavad Gita teaches us that we have to work to satisfy Yajna or Vishnu, because any other work which is not for satisfying the Lord is a cause of bondage. So the conditioned souls, of course, accept the body as oneself, forget their relationship with Krishna, and they act for the interests of the body. Yes. So they take the body as the self, bodily expansions as being kinsmen, and the land of birth as worshipable. And then he performs all sorts of misconceived activities. Oh, Krishna, which lead to his perpetual bondage and the repetition of birth and death in various species. Then the second paragraph, the leaders mislead the people more and more under that same bodily conception. So the leaders in society and the followers glide down to hell, birth after birth. So Srila Prabhupada refers to Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.31. It gives the example, Anda yatandaya upaniyamana. Anda, the blind person. The blind man leads other blind men. The result is they all fall into the ditch. So because the leaders are like this, the result is there's no peace or prosperity. And even the so-called yogis are no better, because Hatha Yoga is basically yoga for people who are in the bodily conception. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, the conclusion is that as long as one is fixed in the bodily conception, he has to suffer birth and death. So verse 32. If therefore the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and the gratification of the palate, so if he does this, the living entity again goes to hell as before. In other words, we have done it before. So, okay, let's have a look at the fairly substantial purport. There's already been discussion about under Tamasra and Tamasra hells. And then after going to those hells, getting hellish bodies like dogs or hogs or cats. So, but after some number, Prabhupada says several such births, it could easily be more, one gets a human birth again. But then, having got the human birth again, then he wastes his time again associating with people who are into sex life, degraded eating, etc. Then gradually he glides down. Gliding is like very gently gliding down to the same under Tamisra and Tamisra hells. Krishna. Anyway, second paragraph. Generally, people want to satisfy the tongue and genitals. That's material life. To eat, drink, and be merry, with no care for understanding one's spiritual identity and anything to do with the process for spiritual advancement. So the point here is that if we want to make spiritual advancement, we have to avoid these people. Because if we do associate with them, then Prabhupada says it is to commit purposeful suicide in the human form of life. Yeah. It's one thing if someone is killed in some situation, but to deliberately, with that purpose in mind, I want to do this, to commit suicide. This is just such a shame. So therefore we should associate with devotees. We should associate with saintly people. Because when you're associating with saintly people, all your doubts about spiritual life, to do it or not to do it, or make progress or not, all these doubts are eradicated and one makes spiritual advancement. So we sometimes find that people are very addicted to a particular type of religious faith, either Hindu, Muslim, Christian. Yeah, they're all possibilities. But still they cannot give up the association of people who are addicted to sex and satisfying the palate. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, here it is clearly said that one may officially be a very religious man, but if he associates with such people, again, those addicted to sex and satisfying the palate, so if he associates with those people again, then he is sure to, Prabhupada says, slide down. It sounds almost pleasant. Slide down to the darkest region of hell. Oh, Krishna. Verse 33, he becomes devoid of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, spiritual intelligence, shyness, austerity, fame, forgiveness, control of the mind, control of the senses, fortune, and all such opportunities. He becomes devoid of these things, the verse is saying. So first thing, those who are too addicted to sex life can't understand the purpose of the absolute truth. They just can't. Neither that, nor can they be clean in their habits, and what to speak of being merciful, showing mercy to others. And not only those things, but they cannot remain grave. They're not capable of really being serious, and they have no interest in the ultimate goal of life. That ultimate goal is Krishna or Vishnu, but these people are just too much into sex. They can't understand that their ultimate interest is Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada goes on about these people. Such people have no sense of decency. They embrace each other in public places, streets, and they say that it's love. So these people, they can't even become materially prosperous. They behave like cats and dogs. This keeps them in the position of cats and dogs. They can't improve their material situation. What to speak of becoming famous or successful? They make a show of doing something they call yoga. What it really is, well, it's just some exercise system. But they can't control their senses and minds. That's the purpose of yoga. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, such people can have no opulence in their lives. In a word, they're very unfortunate. Right, so devotees, we continue on to section 5. Kapila describes the dangers of female association. Right, now that's quite something, isn't it? Okay, that's from verse 34 to verse 40. Let's run through the verses. One should not associate with a coarse fool who's bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who's no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. 35. The infatuation and bondage which accrue to a man from attachment to any other object is not as complete as that resulting from attachment to a woman or to the fellowship of men who are fond of women. Verse 36. At the sight of his own daughter, Brahma was bewildered by her charms and shamelessly ran up to her in the form of a stag when she took the form of a hind. Hind means a female deer. Stag is a male deer, big male deer. Hind means a female deer. Verse 37. Amongst all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, namely men, demigods, and animals, none but the sage Narayan is immune to the attraction of Maya in the form of woman. Verse 38. Just try to understand the mighty strength of my Maya in the shape of woman, who by the mere movement of her eyebrows can keep even the greatest conquerors of the world under her grip. 39. One who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga and has realized his self by rendering service unto me should never associate with an attractive woman, for such a woman is declared in the scripture to be the gateway to hell for the advancing devotee. That is really, isn't that to the point? 40. The woman created by the Lord is the representation of Maya, and one who associates with such Maya by accepting services must certainly know that this is the way of death, just like a blind well covered with grass. Okay, so let's go back and go through this section. It's not a long section. Verse 34. One should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. So Srila Prabhupada makes the point in the purport that the restriction of associating with these type of people we just read about, the dancing dogs, people, men who are dancing dogs in the hands of a woman, and these people who are just, they're coarse fools who are dancing dogs in the hands of women. So those who are trying to be Krishna conscious, must restrict their association with such people. So Prabhupada explains that to advance in Krishna consciousness, one has to develop certain particular qualities like, and Prabhupada lists out a whole lot of important qualities: truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, intelligence and spiritual knowledge, simplicity, material opulence, fame, forgiveness, and control of the mind and the senses. So all of these qualities we just read, they are to be manifested with progress in Krishna consciousness. If you make progress, you'll manifest these different symptoms, these different qualities. But if you associate with a Sudra as described, who's a dancing dog in the hands of a woman, then you can't make that progress. You can't make any progress. So Lord Chaitanya has advised that a person who's in Krishna consciousness, who wants to get out of nescience, must not associate with women or people who are interested in material enjoyment, which often or regularly involves interest in associating with women. But anyway, Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, for a person seeking advancement in Krishna consciousness, such association is more dangerous than suicide. Verse 35. The infatuation and bondage which accrue to a man from attachment to any other object is not as complete as that resulting from attachment to a woman or to the fellowship of men who are fond of women. So Prabhupada makes a very powerful point. Attachment to women is so contaminating that one becomes attached to material life, not only by associating with them, but by associating with those who are too attached to them. Yes. So, Prabhupada goes on, there are many reasons for our conditional life in this world, but the topmost reason, topmost cause of our conditional life in this world is the association of women, which is going to be confirmed in the following verses and different statements coming up just now. So there's a second paragraph here, that in Kali Yuga, association with women is very strong. It's there in every step of life. There's so much advertising, which is full of pictures of women. And Prabhupada makes the point that the attraction for women is very great, physical and psychological. Attraction for women is very great. And therefore people in Kali Yuga are very slack in their spiritual understanding. Vedic civilization, of course, is based on spiritual understanding. So it arranges association with women very cautiously. Prabhupada makes the point, out of the 4 ashrams, the members of 3 of them are strictly prohibited from female association. That's first of all the brahmacharis, then the 3rd order, the vanaprasthas, and finally the 4th order, the sannyasis, strictly prohibited from female association. It's only in the grihastha order, the householders have what Prabhupada would call a license to mix with women under restricted condition. So, in other words, Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, in other words, attraction for woman's association is the cause of the material conditional life. And anyone interested in being freed from this conditional life must detach himself from the association of women. Verse 36. At the sight of his own daughter, Brahma was bewildered by her charms and shamelessly ran up to her in the form of a stag when she took the form of a hind. As we mentioned, a stag is a male deer and a hind is a female deer. In the purport here, Prabhupada gives the two important examples. This example, Lord Brahma being sexually attracted to his daughter. But not only that, but Lord Shiva being attracted by the Mohini Murti, Lord Krishna himself in his female form as Mohini. So both these incidents, they're specific instances which instruct us that even great people like these two, Brahma and Shiva, they became captivated by the beauty of a woman. And so, what to speak of us having the potential for that? So therefore, everyone is advised, Prabhupada mentions, next thing he mentions is that everyone is advised that one should not freely mix. One should not freely mix, even with your own daughter, your mother, or your sister, because the senses are just so strong that you never know. The senses are too strong that when one becomes infatuated, then the senses don't consider what's your relationship with this woman, and won't even consider that this may be your daughter or possibly your mother or possibly your sister. So therefore it's best to practice controlling the senses by performing devotional service, engaging in the service of Madan Mohan, who is Krishna, but Krishna who can subdue Cupid, he can subdue lust. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, only by engaging in the service of Madan Mohan can one curb the dictates of Madan, Cupid. Otherwise, attempts to control the senses will fail. Verse 37, amongst all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, namely men, demigods, and animals, none but the sage Narayan is immune to the attraction of Maya in the form of a woman. There's a shortish purport. So Brahma, of course, is the first being in the universe, and from him came, like his direct sons, Marichi, and then from Marichi, Kasyapa, and Manus, different demigods, humans. But Prabhupada makes the point that but none of them are beyond the attraction of Maya in the form of a woman. None of them. From Lord Brahma to the ant, everyone is attracted to sex life. It is the basic principle of this material world. And particularly what was mentioned here, Lord Brahma being attracted by his daughter. Prabhupada says it's the vivid example that no one is exempted from sex attraction. So Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, woman, therefore, is the wonderful creation of Maya to keep the conditioned soul in shackles. Right. So on we go, devotees, to verse 38. Just try to understand the mighty strength of my Maya in the shape of a woman, who by the mere movement of her eyebrows can keep even the greatest conquerors of the world under her grip. So there's a substantial purport here. And Prabhupada goes into this point about the conquerors, that there are many examples in world history of great conquerors who were captivated by women like Cleopatra, or even specifically actually Cleopatra herself. But if not Cleopatra herself, there's so many great conquerors who became captivated by some beautiful, some outstanding type of woman. And being captivated in that way, some of them, they just fell down and they just lost everything. So Prabhupada makes the point, we have to study the potency of women and of man's attraction for that potency. From where is it generated? Yes. So Prabhupada explains, according to Vedanta Sutra, everything's generated from the Lord, janma yasya yataha, janma adi, that the first source of birth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada makes the point that the captivating power of woman and man's susceptibility to it must also exist in the Lord, in the spiritual world, and must be in his pastimes there. So the second paragraph, the Lord, of course, is the supreme person. He's the supreme male. And as a common, ordinary man, wants to be attracted by a female. So that propensity similarly exists in the Lord. He also wants to be attracted by the beautiful features of a woman. So, Prabhupada raises the question is, if he wants to be captivated by such womanly attraction, would he, the Lord, be attracted by any material woman? And Prabhupada says, it is not possible. It is not possible. That there are even people here in the material world who can give up women if they're attracted by the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Lord. And the example, of course, what a classic example, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur. Yes. Beautiful prostitute came to him at night, tried to attract him, but he was not attracted. Rather, he turned her into a first-class devotee. This material attraction definitely cannot attract the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when he wants to be attracted by a woman, he has to make a woman from his own potency, means his own internal spiritual energy. Who is that? That is Srimati Radharani. So the Goswamis explain that Radharani is a manifestation of the pleasure potency of the Lord. When the Lord wants to enjoy, he has to create a woman from his internal potency. So therefore this tendency is natural and it exists in the spiritual world. And here it exists, obviously, but here it exists in a perverted reflection. And therefore there's so many inebrities and problems and, oh Krishna, it's really difficult. So now there's a third paragraph. Prabhupada explains, so instead of being attracted to material beauty, one should be attracted to Srimati Radharani and Lord Krishna. And then as the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 59, Param Drishva Navartate. So then you'll get that higher taste that chapter 2, verse 59 talks about. That while being restricted, a person may be restricted from sense objects, but the taste for them remains. But if one gives it up through experiencing a higher taste, then one becomes fixed in consciousness. So when one is attracted by the relationship of Srimati Radharani with Lord Krishna in devotional service, and one is getting that higher taste, then one will not be attracted by material feminine beauty. And Prabhupada says, that is the special feature, the special significance of Radha Krishna worship. And Prabhupada refers to Yamunacharya, the guru of Ramanujacharya, who said, since I've become attracted by the beauty of Radha and Krishna, when there's attraction for a woman or a memory of sex life with a woman, I at once spit on it and my face turns in disgust. So Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, when we're attracted by Madan Mohan, and the beauty of Krishna and his consorts, then the shackles of conditioned life, namely the beauty of a material woman, cannot attract us. Verse 39. One who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga and has realized his self by rendering service unto me should never associate with an attractive woman. For such a woman is declared in the scripture to be the gateway to hell for the advancing devotee. Right, so there's the purport here. Bhagavad Gita confirms the culmination of yoga is full Krishna consciousness. Someone, as affirmed in Bhagavad Gita 6.47, someone who's always thinking of Krishna in devotion is the topmost of all yogis. Yogina api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana. That's that verse. Then, in the second chapter of the first canto of the Bhagavatam, it says we become free from contamination by devotional service to the Lord, and then we can understand the science of God. Then, second paragraph is there, and this particular word is referred to. Here the word pratilabdhatma labha occurs. Atma means self and labha means gain. So generally, conditioned souls have lost Atma, the self, but transcendentalists have realized the self. So such self-realized souls who want to come to the highest yogic perfection shouldn't associate with young women. Now, of course, there's so many rascals who, even in the name of yoga, this is the point, they say that while you have genitals, you must enjoy women as much as you can. Yes, because you've got the genitals, you must enjoy women as much as you can, and at the same time be a yogi. Oh, Krishna. But no real yoga accepts this. This association is gateway to hell. These so-called yogi rascals. So as we've just read a matter of minutes ago, in Vedic society, 3 orders are prohibited to associate with women: brahmachari, vanaprastha, and sannyasis. Only the grihastas can, and that's just for having nice children to be brought up in Krishna consciousness. Then Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, if, however, one wants to stick to continued existence in the material world, he may indulge in female association unrestrictedly. Oh, Krishna. Yeah. And of course, so many men do that. So many men do that, or try to do that, or want to do that. So on to verse 40. The woman created by the Lord is the representation of Maya, and one who associates with such Maya by accepting services must certainly know that this is the way of death, just like a blind well covered with grass. So sometimes you get these blind wells covered with grass out somewhere in the fields, behind the fields, in some forest area, is this forgotten well, which isn't used any longer, but it's there. And now it's become overgrown. and some foolish person messing around back there in that area suddenly falls into it. And because nobody goes out there, it's not being used. It's not in an area that people go to. So sometimes someone falls into such a blind well and they die. So anyway, Prabhupada goes on to say, similarly, association with woman begins when you accept service from her, because woman is created by the Lord to serve men. And so when you start accepting service from a woman, then you get trapped. So anyway, so if he's not intelligent enough to know she's the gateway to hellish life, he may indulge in her association liberally. But this is for those who want to actually progress in transcendental life. This is restricted. Prabhupada, of course, he's writing this, 50 years ago. Prabhupada says 50 years ago means 100 years ago now. In Hindu society, such association was limited, was restricted. A wife couldn't see a husband during the day. The householders even had different residential quarters. The quarters inside the residential house were for ladies, and the external quarters were for the man. So, of course, on a certain level, Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, acceptance of service rendered by a woman may appear very pleasing, but one should be very cautious in accepting such service, because it's clearly said that woman is the gateway to death or forgetfulness of oneself. She blocks the path of spiritual realization. Okay, so now we go on. The sixth section is just verse 41 and 42. And we call this dealings of a woman with her husband. Okay, so let's go through this. It's just 2 verses. Right, so we'll just go straight through. We won't do the verses separately. A living entity who, as a result of attachment to a woman in his previous life, has been endowed with the form of a woman, foolishly looks upon Maya in the form of a man, her husband, as the bestower of wealth, progeny, house, and other material assets. So a man sees a woman, particularly means a materially affected man, sees a woman in a certain way, manifesting certain attractive things. But the woman, seeing a man, her husband, sees him as being the bestower of different desirable material things. So Prabhupada says that from this verse, it appears that a woman may well have been a man in the previous life, but due to the attachment to his wife now has a woman's body. And Prabhupada makes the point that Bhagavad Gita confirms the principle. We are born in our next life in terms of what we think of at death, what we have become attached to during our lives. So if someone is too attached to his wife, he gets a female body. So therefore in Hinduism, the chastity of the wife is emphasized. If she's attached to a husband, she gets a male body in her next life. So her attachment to her husband will elevate her, but her husband's attachment to her will degrade him. So Prabhupada talks about our natures as souls. The soul, of course, is the marginal energy of the Lord. And therefore, as energy, the soul is like a woman. So the male body is a better chance to get out of Maya. There's less chance in a woman's body. So particularly the male body should not be misused through attachment to women and then becoming a woman in the next life. Prabhupada says a woman is generally fond of household prosperity, ornaments, furniture, and dresses. She is satisfied when the husband supplies all these things sufficiently. So therefore the man has to be careful about accepting service from women. But the thing is, if both man and woman want to serve Krishna, then the attachments slacken, and both become equally eligible to go back to Godhead. But in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna confirms that by saying that anyone, even lower species, or women, or business people, or laborers, they can all go back to Godhead. A man should not be attached to a woman, nor should a woman be attached to a man. Both man and woman should be attached to the service of the Lord. Then there's the possibility of liberation from material entanglement for both of them. Verse 42. A woman, therefore, should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of the external energy of the Lord for her death, just as the sweet singing of the hunter is death for the deer. So here Lord Kapila Dev is saying that not only is woman the gateway to hell for man, but man is the gateway to hell for woman. That's very important, isn't it? It's a question of attachment. A man becomes attached to a woman because of her service, her beauty, and like that. And a woman becomes attached to a man for his giving her a nice home, ornaments, clothes, children. It's a question of attachment to each other. Yes. So in terms, as long as either or both are attached to the other, then the woman, in material terms, then the woman's dangerous for the man and the man is dangerous for the woman. But if the attachment is transferred to Krishna, then both of them become Krishna conscious, and then marriage is very nice. So Rupa Goswami, his one verse there from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is quoted. Yukta Vairagya is required. Yes. To be not attached to things for yourself, but nirabandha, Krishna sambandha. Appreciate things in terms of their relationship with Krishna and use things in that way. So therefore Prabhupada says, man and woman should live together as householders in relationship with Krishna, only for the purpose of discharging duties in the service of Krishna. Engage the children, the wife, engage the husband, all in Krishna conscious duties, and then all these material attachments, bodily attachments will disappear. Prabhupada concludes the purport by saying, since the medium is Krishna, the consciousness is pure, and there's no possibility of degradation at any time. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.